You ready for this? Yes. Are you ready for this? This is crazy hub demolition time. Sounds like a duck call, doesn't it? Well, anyway, maybe not so much, but here we go. This is what we're talking about. This hub, grindy feel to it and sound. So when you're spinning it, it's not so smooth. Why? Well, one of the bearings in there is probably kind of dried out, compromised, but we're going to take a look and pull this apart and see what we can come up with.
Welcome to I Know a Guy Bicycles, hanging out with a guy. Hi, I'm Justin the Guy. Obviously I have a garage shop. Take scary out of used, one bike at a time. If you want to be kept up to date on latest projects and topics, please like and subscribe.
So we're going to take this apart. How are we going to take it apart? There's a couple tools, kind of specialty, but the other ones you can kind of do yourself. And yeah, let's just take a look at the inside of this S-Works Specialized Hub. Yep, it's time to tear it apart. Specialty tools. You want one of these little clamp things. I know you can probably get these at the hardware store. This is the Park Tool one. It's basically an axle holder. I'm pretty sure I've seen this at the hardware store. So what you need to do is hold that axle piece to be able to pull it apart. These are good to have too if you need to adjust any cones. And it used to be a pretty common used tool back in the day, but is since then no longer back in the day, and we don't use it quite often. The reason why I need this is I need to clamp onto the piece here. These are not threaded on or anything. They slide on and off. Compression. In my opinion, not the greatest design. But anywho, that's how we're going to get these off. So, need one of these, a vise, a sauna cleaner to clean the bearing once we do get it apart, a good old hammer, something with a rubber mallet. Rubber mallet is my favorite tool. And, probably a little pick. And what else? Well, we might need to find something else when we're in there, but I think really that's pretty close to what we need to take this thing apart. So let's start taking it apart. Let's see what we find. All right, so I need to get this. This guy just kind of forcibly slides over in that. Slide that into the vise. And you got to get a good clamp on it to hold it in place. Not too much because it's aluminum. But you want to be able to not do that. Maybe a little bit tighter. Make sure it's flush to pop that bad boy right off. So that's one side. So release that. And don't get these confused. So you'll need to kind of space them out where you want to work on them. You take it apart so when you put it back together, you're not confusing them one place to another. So got that on there. Slide that bad boy in here tight. Boop. Pops that right off. You can see the bearing in there. All right. Now what? Well, you can use that later, but we're going to spread out our parts here when we disassemble. Let's have a professional look and, have our pieces all laid out like so. Okay, so I'm like, all right, now what? I got this thing in here. How do I get this out? Well, this is how the free hub body slides right off after this. Be mindful there's a little ratch there. And there's also a sleeve inside that this is sliding on internally. That's the ratcheting. So we'll put that on the drive side portion. That's your free hub body. And this one actually feels pretty good. These are really, really hard to take apart if you're even going to go that direction. But I believe there's the seal. You want to get that all cleaned out so you get all that gunk out of there so it's free of the gunk. And this is actually the bearing in here. So This bearing feels very smooth, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to wipe this down and give it a good cleaning. But what I'm really after is what's in here. Okay, there's a spring that kind of keeps everything in place. Keep mindful of what direction it is. So we're going to set that aside. That's that sleeve I was talking about. That's a spacer from the free hub body to the hub shell. So you want to keep that in place and clean. So now we're exposed to the bearing here and the bearing here. Well, how do I get those bearings out? Well, that's a pretty easy task, and you want to be careful. If they're boogered, you can't just do it here. You'll have to probably put in a gap of a vise. I think that will pop that out. Boop. And then go in the other direction, so you don't need a fancy tool to remove them. And that pops out the internal bearing. So now we just have the free hub body, which we'll do our best to clean out. And that's it for the bits. And this bearing, you notice, is very little eensy-meensy teeny-weeny bearing. Somewhere in there. Again, not the greatest design, but this is the one. That's the grindy one. So we need to take that apart and clean it and flush it. This one feels very smooth, so I'm not going to go crazy with that one. But we want to pop that out, flush it out with some, like a good cleaner. Put it in here, concentrated, not purple power, but simple green, and get that thrown into the ultrasonic cleaner. And the heating element will clean that bearing up and see if we can get this to come back to life. Then we refresh it with bearing lube, and clean this all up and put it back together and see if we have a better result than we had before. Keep in mind that these bits are quite dirty. You don't want to just chuck this in the ultrasonic cleaner because you don't want it to get exposed to that bearing unless you feel like you want to tear that all apart. But since this is feeling pretty good, and this is a big bearing surface, so somewhere along the lines between these three bearing contacts, the internal one probably got a lot of heat, right? It's smaller and it's inside, so doing a lot of descents, let's say you're going 50 miles per hour down Vail Pass, this little booger inside is going to get a little warm because it's in the inside of the hub. Anywho, we'll see if we can get this come back to life. Let's get a closer look. All right, this is where you definitely need your reading glasses. What you're shooting for is to get the inside of that seal to pop off. And the razor blade is about the best way to do that. So you can kind of see this is all just dirty and dry. I'm going to pull both sides off like so to expose those bearings inside there. Now the bearing and all those parts are exposed. Then you notice I wear gloves a lot, and I wish I was wearing gloves when I was in the 90s, but gloves and safety glasses. So what we want to do is we can just expose this here and just what I'm going to do is try to flush some of that old gunk out, soften it up with this and the ultrasonic cleaner with purple power. Not purple power, but simple green. You can use purple power too. But then, since I have a very highly aromatic chemical, kind of get the outside, not too much, because I don't want to damage it. But here we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a concentration in a jar. Boop, boop, boop. So we're going to put that in there. What else can I put in there? Spring. Little ratchet, not this guy. I don't know if well, yeah. Clean that, keep that bearing, like so, and give myself some simple green. Then we proceeded into ultrasonic cleaner. So I like just to unplug and plug it. That turns it on. I just filled this up with fresh water and simple green, so it's already at 41 Celsius, but it would be and usually do 5 minutes there. And I got that guy in there, so basically, how pretty that is. Try to keep it pretty as possible. And I just slide this in there, and the ultrasonic cleaner will go through the glass, the vibration, and also plastic if you want to throw in a plastic bag. I also have this is a trick that I learned. It's a silicone pad, and what that does, if you have metal on metal contact, it prevents that kind of scarring and so forth. High precision tools from a machinist that is a buddy of mine. But in any case, here we go, and we're just going to give it a good 5 minutes and see where we're at. Well, that is all cooking. I will take the rest of the parts and give it a good wipe down. And I'm not going to spray directly onto the bearing since I want to just keep this one intact because it feels really smooth. But on this part, since it's just straight aluminum, I will take you can use carb cleaner or brake cleaner. In the cycling industry, you want to use Clean Streak. I just use this because I go through so much of it, and Clean Streak is less damaging on paint and so forth. So you got to be very careful with the carb cleaner and brake cleaner. But you know, for me, it's about cost. I mean, I go through so much of it, and I've learned the hard way what not to put it on and what to put it on. So I'm giving this a good cleaning, so that's a good one there. And then I'm going to clean and wipe off my free hub body as much as that contaminant. So you can see all that gunk coming off. And there's a seal on here. You just want to get your thumbnail underneath that to pick out the extra gunk, so it really cleans that up. And then you got a seal on the other side. If I really wanted to, I can pull it out, but I think I can get it pretty clean. And the free hub body was not the problem. It was actually that bearing causing some mischief. So we're going to take care of that. So other than that, I'm going to get my... And these are like your industrial paper towels. You get to the automotive section of Walmart. Used to do a lot of rags, and this way I can just kind of tell when they're really bad. I still have rags too, but these seem to work really well. And I'm going to clean these out. You'll notice there's like little scarring. This is an alloy free hub body. You know, the alloy free hub body, when you put a cassette on there that's steel, it'll cut in there, where you'll find that pretty common on the alloy free hub bodies. So sometimes you'll have to take a little flat file and file down those little scuffs to get the free hub body to go on there smoothly. So yeah, now I'm seeing this is a DT Swiss free hub body. It has a saying on the seal here, it's a DT Swiss, and this one is, oh boy, it's a 1929 317, whatever model number that is, but that's what we got here. So if I was going to switch this out with a new free hub body, that would be something I'd be looking into. So I just want to get this all completely cleaned out while the rest of my parts are cleaning out in ultrasonic cleaner. So yeah, there we go. Beautiful. While we wait, we have a little sip. Okay, so got our little parts there. Okay, sorry. All right, we're finished up. There we go. We're gonna rinse this out and rinse it under the hot water and go through that bearing, see if it's all cleaned out. If we need to, we'll repeat this process until it's completely clean. What do we got here? All rinsed out. We got that. Ooh, look how clean that came out. Perfect. That's pretty clean too. That's the non-drive, and this is the drive side. I still got a little gunk on here, but not too bad. And that seal. Yeah. I mean, if I really wanted to, I can go through it again. Oh, it still comes right out. So there we go. Spacer. There's one. Uh-oh. Missing the other one. Where'd it go? Oh, he went back on there. Ah! That happened to me another time. Like it pops right back. You know, like it wants to go back to its home. It's so weird. Anyway. Oh, I use a dry one on here. Okay. Yeah. You're clean in there, all right. I'm gonna run this under more hot water, get it to really flush out. All right. That is definitely smooth. I mean, all things considered, we're gonna throw some grease back in there, see if we can get that thing to come back to life. We got some grease inside here. And you put the seal back on. Same thing for the other side. So this guy's back to life. Now to reassemble. So we need to get this bearing back in here. And bearing's going first, so then we'll worry about the spring and the ratchet system for the freehub body. But I figured out how to get this in. First you want to do the small bearing, and that way you can tap that in place going this direction here. And I like to use a little bit of lube on the inside here to help it guide into place. So that sets it in place. And now we can get this one back through. And now you're like, oh, how do we get this bearing on? Because we can't smash it on there. Well, the trick on getting bearings back into place, so put a little bit of lube on this external, to use a socket. Socket, you're asking, is like, what do you mean socket? I mean socket. And then you have to use like the gap in the vise here. So it goes through. And this is light and polite tapping to set that bearing back into place. Like so. Then I use a smaller bearing so it sets in there. Like so. So now I have my bearings set, and that should be pretty much done with my hammering. So I got my bearings back to where they're supposed to be. Then we got to put the spring back in. And that's the first one. And it doesn't go this way. You know, like remember it tapered outwards, so you want to get that to fit in there. Then you have the ratcheting portion and the smooth portion. The ratcheting obviously goes up against the ratcheting. So it does this, right? So this is where you don't use bearing grease. You use a lighter lube. I've heard some have used mineral oil for, and you put this as your spacer that bumps it out. And this goes over here. So yeah, light lube or mineral oil. Mineral oils goes on Mavics, free hubs. And slide that in place. Like so. Whoop. Then, this one had the thicker portion of the seal on the inside. So it's more of a boop, boop, boop. And this goes right on top of this. Actually, wrong. This one was on the outside. This is the inside. Drive side pops in. Then, that's right, this one goes over this one here. And that compresses down and voila. A lot smoother. Check it out. And that ratcheting sound, well, that is the sound of the S-Works hub, which kind of copies the big ratcheting noise of Chris King hubs and some other high-end DT Swiss and that kind of thing. So, not very uncommon with this particular hub to make that much noise. Well, hopefully that gives you some insights of not being so afraid and what kind of tools you need to use to disassemble and put this back together. Yes, there's fancier tools you can buy out there. I would suggest if you're not pulling these things apart all the time, get the less expensive tools that you'll find on Amazon for pulling bearings and putting them back in, a bearing press, that kind of deal. This one, you actually use the axle to press it back into place. If it's clean and the light lube, it'll slide back in where it's supposed to go, and it should be good to go for the next 1,000 miles or so. Well, that's your 101 of tearing apart a S-Works old school hub. Whoa! Until next time, from the garage, have a wonderful day.